was a big storm coming, would you?
The storm is coming.
What did he just say?
He said there's a storm coming.
At the heart of the storm is a source of evil that will change their lives forever.
I don't understand why you chose me.
You want to change the world, son. So do I. People want to change the world, don't know how to begin.
Let's start with a smile. Be honest.
It's love! The secret ingredient is love!
Okay, just calm down.
What the hell are we doing here, Harry?
All you have to do is give me answers. Just give me the right answer.
Tell the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
I can't promise I'll try, but I'll try to try.
We can figure this out, right? We can figure this out, right?
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Worship in the Storm. I am one of your hosts, Immanuel Kingman, without Mimi. She's working. And our co-host, Andy Rouse from the Deep Share.
What up, everybody? Happy Friday. How's
Yes.
it going, man?
I'm doing well. I went live earlier for my Patreon Q&A.
Nice.
It's the first time I did that. I got a couple Patreon members. Nobody stopped into the Q&A, but it was just getting the feeler out there, so it was cool to get it going.
Got to start somewhere, man.
Yeah.
Trickles in at first, and then it gets bigger after that.
Yeah.
Just persistence, my friend.
That's right. And I know persistence. I am very very persistent with things. That's how I have to take life, because I don't give up. I'm not one who quits when I fail. I see where I was coming up short, and then I readjust and make myself better, and then come next time at a different way. So it's just all about building, and it takes time. Obviously, with this, there's so many different content creators right now, and so many different things you could be spending your time and money doing. So it's definitely a competition, even though it's not. It's not, but it is.
Yeah, it's a friendly it's like friendly. We're all just vying for attention like any other entertainer, I guess you could say, even though we're not trying to just entertain.
Right.
But this goes into an interesting conversation I just had with Nomad the other night.
I can't wait to hear that.
Oh, it was good. It was good. It was really good. And we were kind of talking about that stuff too. It's I don't know, man. There's just so much to say about it.
Yeah, and I just saw you on Expanding Reality the other day. That was a very good one as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Brandon's an excellent host. He always asks such amazing questions, and he goes off on crazy tangents in his question like I do. So I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay, I can go all over the place with this.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah.
That's why when I went on his show, I was presenting the Book of Enoch, and I love doing that. But it would have been awesome to just come on there as to talk about just like shoot the shit with him and hang out.
Yeah, oddly enough, when Brandon and I were talking on the phone weeks before the episode, I introduced him to the idea of Bach Saga because he had never even heard of it, even from me yet. Okay. And he was like, what is this? What's going on? And I started giving him little breadcrumbs. He's like, what? We got to talk about that on the show. I'm like, all right, that sounds good. So I thought we were kind of going to just like roll into that. But when we started with like psychedelics and consciousness, yeah, Bach Saga had to take a big back seat because, of course, both of us can just trail off into Never Never Land with that shit.
Yeah, and Bach Saga, there's so much to it that you need it in little doses.
Yeah, I think Dan and Yake and I are talking about doing some episodes of Roots of Creation where we're like taking some of some pieces of the book, like right from the book, because trying to remember all this stuff, I mean, shit, we're trying to like learn another language
Right.
as well as all of the history surrounding it, and it's difficult. So
Yeah.
if we could just take Carl Borgen's book and earmark some sections to talk about in some upcoming episodes, I think that'll help us get a little bit more pure information out rather than our reactions and opinions to things that we're kind of trailing off on or not being very thorough at explaining,
Hmm.
because it's such a huge topic. It's just difficult to be consistent with how you explain it too. I've started off on like multiple different appearances on other podcasts trying to explain it, coming at it different ways, and it just never comes out the way I want it to.
Well, I guess that if somebody was to go look at all your appearances talking about it, that they'd probably get a pretty clear picture, at least of the background information, the basics of it.
For sure, for sure. I think doing some stuff from the book and maybe putting in some clips from other interviews and this and that for Roots of Creation will kind of elevate how the information is being expressed, because the dudes in Scandinavia that know this language inside and out and can easily compare it to our modern languages and how it all works and how it fit together, it's like poetry, man,
Mm.
and we butcher the shit out of it all the time.
Well, is it an ebook?
I don't know if it is, because Box Saga, an introduction, is a make to order book.
Oh, okay.
But I can always try to get you a copy.
Well, I was
Physical
gonna
copy, but-
I was gonna say, so if it was an ebook, a good way to do it would be when you're going through that book is to just throw it on a slide and make a slideshow with it, kind of.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea, actually. And I think I'm gonna look it up right now, actually, just to see if it is. And he's got another book out about the group too. It's more recent. It's called Temporarily Insane, and it's about his time with Eeyore Bach and the whole tribe of guys that were surrounding that story. Let's see, Carl Borgen, Bach Saga, an introduction.
Yeah, Mimi's gonna get into it once she finishes the language crystals. She's keeps.
And I want to make time at some point to get into that language crystal book, because she sent me the PDF and I really want to check it out. Ebook, yep, bam, it's
Okay.
available on Amazon right there.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably the only way to do it, is to get. Of course, it's through Kindle, so I guess you'd have to have the
Kindle.
Kindle app or something.
Yeah.
Whatever. Maybe I'll friggin' Xerox a bunch of friggin' pages and we'll do it that way.
Yeah, because when I was doing the Book of Enoch series, like breaking it down that way made me really understand it in a deeper way. Even in the moment, I didn't feel like I knew it, but then now reflecting on it, I'm like, oh, okay, I do know it deeply because I took all that time to, copy each line. Like I'm reading the lines and I'm copying it, and then I'm pasting it over here, and then I'm making sure that okay, everything on this slide is together. So you're reading it and rereading it so many times it really helps you convey the message to other people.
Yeah, it sinks in pretty harshly when you're just doing it over and over again.
Yeah.
That's like when I was younger, I knew kids that would, reread their favorite book like 6 times. And oddly enough, as much as I always loved reading, I never was able to do that. But now I get it, because of getting into nonfiction as an adult was such a
Right.
different thing, where I was rereading chapters over and over again and highlighting in my books. I didn't care, I all over them just to be able to reread things over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did want to ask you about this man who appeared to you that I heard you talk about in expanding reality. The man when you hit a grand slam, and then another
I'm shocked
time.
I didn't tell you this story yet.
Yeah, I can't believe you haven't told me. That sounds like an angel.
Dude, yeah. I've always thought of it as like a guardian angel, even though I don't think of it in that same standard traditional Americanized
Right.
way. But yeah, I'll tell the story gladly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
it's one of my craziest stories for sure. So when I was younger in high school, I think I was a sophomore. And it was like right before, like a year before I did psychedelics. So I was just kind of totally innocent for the most part. But I was a jock. I played baseball and I was up against a competing team and I was batting like last because the school I went to was so competitive and it was
Mm.
all fake. It was all dads with money throwing it at this and that. And like, so all like the super rich kids were at the very top of the batting order and
Right.
everything. So I was
So was this
batting last.
varsity?
It wasn't it was junior varsity.
JV? Okay.
So yeah, and I was yeah, so I was batting last. Nobody knew who I was, whatever. And the bases were loaded in the end of the game. I was like, this is crazy. But so before I got up, I was on deck, and this weird old dude was behind the backstop, and he's like, "Hey, kid." I'm like, this is like something out of a 50s movie, you know? He's like, hey. And he got my attention, and I was like, yeah. And he was like, the wind's blowing out for you, buddy. And I was like, okay. I was like, this guy's nuts. And anyway, I got up, first pitch, grand slam into the softball field behind the the regular field that I
A
was playing on.
walk-off?
Yeah, walk-off grand slam against a very competitive team that we were playing
Wow.
against. And yeah, suddenly I was hitting fourth in the lineup and blah blah blah. And it just went from there. But I remember looking back at that guy and he was just like had that knowing look behind the cage, just like, yeah. So that was creepy enough, right?
So what? So let me ask you before you go into the second part.
Sure.
Is he someone who you would see at games regularly? Did you ever see
No.
him? Did
No, and
anyone else
we were
see him?
traveling. This was high school, so and I don't
Okay.
know
It
at
was a
that
away
so
game?
it was an away game. We were at this
Oh,
school.
wow.
So, yeah, I don't know if anybody else saw him. I didn't see him interacting with anybody, but I also didn't, there were no weird moments where no one could see him or something like that. But so that was weird. And actually, while I was telling that part of the story, I just realized something about kind of co-creation, manifestation. I loved baseball growing up. It's still part of me. I still will be the only one in the room that's okay with watching a baseball game. And when I was a kid, every single day when I was a little kid, I'd be out in my backyard pretending that I was up at the plate, throwing it to myself and hitting it over my backyard fence, pretending there was a big crowd out there. I was doing it all day long, every day in the summer. And how about that? A big public thing happened in high school where I was able to do that,
Yeah.
So
Wow.
maybe, I don't know.
So
Anyway,
what
go ahead.
position? What position did you play?
So at the time that year, I was like an alternate in the outfield in general, but I was always like a shortstop in like the
So
town
utility?
leagues, so I was shortstop in the town league because like in the towns, it's like there's only a handful of guys that really care and are really good at baseball at that level. Who gives a shit for the most part? So I was a good shortstop. But when it came to this bigger school, my
Mhm.
father was like, you should go out for the outfield. You have a really good arm. There's going to be 30 kids going out for the shortstop. You might get it. I'm not saying you won't, but you might do some serious damage as an outfielder.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. So at some point or whatever, I ended up talking to my coach and I ended up in outfield, because I had a gun. I would fucking haul it from right field and nail people on third and shit like that. It was great.
Awesome.
Yeah. I had a lot of passion for it for a long time.
Yeah, I took pitching lessons. I was a really good
Me
pitcher.
too. That's awesome, dude. I
Yeah.
actually took batting lessons as well. My coach
Oh,
was
wow.
awesome. He was just this crazy old dude, not the same one, but he chucked baseballs at me and shit. But he was
Oh,
funny.
wow.
He was great though. He was all like as scary and abusive as that may sound. He was all laughs and he was all like, teaching. He was awesome.
Yeah,
But that's how it was.
I never took hitting or batting lessons. We went undefeated several years. My dad was the coach.
Nice.
Our team was stacked. We were really good. Like I was playing like when I was like 13, I'd play against 16-year-olds, and I made the all-star team as like, being that young, like I would still like be one of the starters on like the all-star team. I remember one year we went up against two teams where these kids they had scholarships. So it was youth club, township type of deal. It wasn't school ball, the team I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
the pitchers we were going up against, they both had scholarships to like D2 or D3 schools. And they were much better than I was, but they were 3 years older than me. But it was like a really competitive game, and we ended up being the one team. It was me and someone who was a day older than me. He was a friend of mine growing up. He's no longer with us, but him and we were so competitive with each other, and we were just like everything. He lived across the street from me, so we were so competitive about everything, and we were just both really good players. We were like the top two pitchers. I was third base, he was shortstop, so it was like we were always with each other playing. And I was slow. I was a very slow runner, so I was the number 3 hitter because I would hit the ball far, or I would at least make contact, but I couldn't run all that fast. And then he was the cleanup hitter because he was a little bit faster than me. So if I didn't get on, then he would be able to do some damage himself.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had a kid like that too. I wonder if that's a common thing among us growing up. But like, yeah, there was a guy, whether we were on the same town league or town team or competing ones, we are always like this tense friendship, like kind of buddies, but kind of enemies. Like, all right,
Yeah.
that's the really good guy on that team,
Right.
Or this time he's on my team. Oh, they're all fucked.
Yeah.
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 That was fun, man. So
For sure.
so
Well,
check it out.
one last thing that
Oh,
I want to
sure.
say
Yeah.
before we move on from baseball is, so I had Lenny Dykstra liked one of my tweets earlier in this week.
Really?
Yeah, and it was a tweet about Joe Biden being at the CFR, giving that speech where he talked about, when in 2014 he told Ukraine's president that if he didn't remove the prosecutor who was prosecuting Burisma Holdings, his son's energy company in Ukraine, if he didn't fire that prosecutor, then he wasn't getting money. And he told that story to the CFR in 2017. So I tweeted that out. And Lenny Dykstra, I don't know how he saw it, but maybe he searched for it or something. But yeah, he liked my tweet. I was like, yeah, I DM'd him to try to get him on the show. You never
Oh my
answered,
God.
but
You never know. You never
yeah,
know, right?
that would be great.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
because I
Yeah.
grew up a Phillies fan. I mean, Lenny Dykstra
Yeah, that's
nails,
nuts, man. That's nuts. That
Yeah.
would be like if Mo Vaughn liked my tweet. I don't know
I
if that
know,
name, if anybody remembers Mo Vaughn,
Yeah, I remember Mo Vaughn.
local Red Sox fucking hero.
Yeah.
Probably a terrible human. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, Lenny
They're all-
Dykstra is right there. He's right on par with that. So, but the thing is, we were talking about baseball, and you're saying how you watch it. I was a big into baseball. It was a big part of my life growing up,
Yeah, dude.
and somehow Lenny Dykstra, this guy, just likes my tweet all of a sudden.
That's so
like
cool,
that
man.
was like when I saw that it says tweet liked by him, like Lenny Dykstra. I click on it, it has the blue check mark and everything. I was like, no way, like that's awesome.
Like what? That
Yeah.
it's like that has to be a wink from the universe.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had him take a screenshot of that to, I was feeling myself after that a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you, man. So, okay, yeah. So fast forward years, baseball's over. No more baseball. I went away from the school I was at. So for 2 years, I went to a private school, and I've never looked into them, but they were a Catholic school, and it's like a certain brotherhood. So I'd be very curious to look into like that brotherhood now that I'm so far gone from there. But anyway, it was an all guys school too, which had its
Oh.
benefits. It was all focus. I didn't, there was no distraction for the
Yeah.
most part. But yeah, so I left there, went back to the town because I missed my other buddies. I missed curls, the whole thing. And the coach there was this dick that I used to know. And he was a guy older than me, but he was he had graduated to become like the varsity coach and shit like that. He was all connected up and everything. And I was hearing rumors from buddies that, oh yeah, he says, yeah, you don't stand a chance thinking you can just come from that school and thinking you're just gonna make the team. And I'm like, wow, I've never said a word about any of it. I just showed up at this school instead of that one now, and suddenly my fucking name is on this dude's tongue. So yeah, at that point I was starting to smoke pot, starting to listen to metal, like everything was starting to. Well, no, I had listened to metal before that. Oh yeah, that first 2 years of high school was where I really found all the metal I love. But I was starting to smoke pot for sure. That's when it really started. So yeah, I couldn't deal with that anymore. And so I just knew it was all politics and all bullshit and all ego and everything. So I was done. Never tried out for it at all. So I became a total burnout, tripping and everything, and totally blown away by the experience, hanging out with buddies, doing nothing. So we find ourselves at a bookstore, those old things that don't really
How old were
exist
you?
anymore. This was, I was probably at this time, I'm fast forwarding now. Like I just burn out for years out of high school, basically.
Right.
But yeah, 19, I would say 20.
Okay.
So
So like
at
5 years later.
yeah, 5 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be curious to find out exactly how long, but yeah, so we're at a bookstore, something that really doesn't exist anymore. And we're sitting down in the cafe area. I got a book, a buddy's got a book. We're both fascinated by all kinds of weird shit. And we have our friend Jen with us, and she gets asked by this old dude sitting in the corner, "Hey, can you help me with I just don't use laptops often. Can you help me with this?" And she's like, she gets up. We had been talking about crazy quantum physics and whatever. And she comes back a few minutes later. We pay our bill and we leave. We get to the corner. I'm in my pockets, desperately searching for my lighter. I can't find it anywhere. And they keep walking ahead to the car. And suddenly that dude that was in the cafe in the corner with the laptop is there on the corner smoking a butt. No laptop. He must have left it inside or something. I don't know. He's like, "Hey, you need a light?" And I was like, "I guess I do." So he gives me a light. And he said, "Hey, so don't always believe what you hear." And I was like, "Oh, were you over hearing us talk crazy talking there?" And he was like, yeah, I'm just saying, don't always believe what you hear. And don't always believe what you think either." And I was like, "Oh, okay. This is like a crazy coincidence." Cause I mean, and he's just like, "Nothing's a coincidence, Andy. Nothing at all is a coincidence."
Wow, he knew your name?
Yeah, and I didn't even pick up on that until afterwards. I was like, he said my fucking name. But so I say thanks. I give him his lighter back. And I was like, "Do I know you? I've seen you before, right?" And he was like, he just didn't answer me really. He just kind of confirmed that there's no such thing as coincidences. So I start walking away. Our car is parked all the way at the end of the parking lot from there. I get back to the car, I get in, and they're already talking about something else. I'm about to kind of bust in like, "Oh, I just had this really weird experience." And before I can even say anything, my hand goes in my pocket and boom, there's my lighter. No problem at all. No obstruction. Just right there. Right there. I had no reason not to find it. And I'm putting these pieces together. I'm like, my skin is just trembling. My hair is standing up. And I'm like, that was that fucking guy from the backstop. His face, I can see it right now.
Wow.
And I always feel like things come in threes, and I still haven't gotten the third visit.
Okay. Well, so what? That was about 15 years ago, that second one?
So that was when I was 20. So yeah, like 16 years ago, 17 years ago. It's been a long time, but I've been far away from most psychedelics for a long time too. So maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. I was just about to get into them on the first one, and I was just riding the crazy waves when I saw him the second
Yeah, I was
time.
going to say, were you into anything specific at the time? Like, was it a big moment around that time for you?
So I don't know if I could narrow down like what I was researching that moment, or that day or that week or that month. But I know in that time period, even when I had first taken psychedelics, the first couple times, I was still very, I don't know, lacking any spiritual meaning in what I was finding, or any way to express what I had experienced in like a cohesive way. And when I finally did get to the roots of like Gnosticism and Christianity itself and all the religions that I could study, that's when I found more of a connection to all of it. But, at that time, I was very obsessed with science. And I still appreciate the scientific method, of course, and a lot of aspects of science. But back then, I was all hail science, man,
Hmm.
for sure. So it's interesting now that you posed that question to me. Like, was that a significant point for him to say, don't always believe what you hear or what you think,
Right.
that could be something to it. Of course, he could say that at any day of my life, and I think it would probably be true on some level, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how we get come up with solutions to all this craziness is having big ideas of, and it's not necessarily well. Maybe at that point in time, maybe you did believe it heavily, but now you're at a space where you're like, maybe I don't believe everything I say all the time, but I just like to say it. I like to get it out of my mind, hear what it sounds like. Some people like writing things down, journaling. Some people
Mhm.
like podcasting.
Right, yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I have writing as an outlet too. I just never do it anymore, and I think I got to change that now. I'm making plans to really change that and start
Yeah.
writing more. But I love fiction, and I hope that's still okay in the truther community. You know what I mean? Because even myself, I've had so many stints where I've gone like years without enjoying too much music at
Yeah.
all, or any entertainment really, because I'm all obsessed with like research and everything. And that's fine to a certain extent. But I think just like meditation, a breather is okay. Maybe I'm saying this because recently I've been only listening to like fiction audio dramas. As silly as that may sound, I love it. I love fiction. I love being
Probably getting you
swept
into the
away.
creative nature.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting creativity out of truth and shocking discovery about the human race or anything like that. But I do
Mhm.
think it tickles a completely different nerve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And fiction, programming or not, whatever. Especially if you're aware of it, you're above that shit.
Mhm.
You can tap into that creative source because, man, of course if they're gonna program something, they're gonna hijack the most creative people out there to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting you talk about you're being called to writing. I'm going to be writing. I was just on with so I had on Dr. Ernie Prabhakar episode 107. He is an MIT and Caltech physicist, and yeah, he contacted
Dude,
me. He's a
that's crazy.
second generation immigrant from India, ninth generation Christian. His ancestor way back when 9 generations ago was Christianized when they brought Christianity to India, and he was given the Christian name of Aaron. Uh, so he has like this long history, and he studied all the, well, not all, but he studied religion very heavily, and he was so I had him on, and he's very interested in my story, and he was asking me last night, like, so he brought me on his uh, well, it wasn't even a show, but he's going to put it on his podcast, but he invited me because he does consultations for people to help them get into a direction, and he was really interested in seeing what I was going to be doing. And I was like, well, I've been getting called to write a book, or actually like a series of books is what I'm being called to write, because I have sci-fi on the mind of, I want to talk about all the stuff that I talk about on the podcast, but, if I presented it as a sci-fi book, the way that I see consciousness and reality with, the different beings that are here and all, I think I could make a really good sci-fi fiction book, but I also wanna write my story, and
Yeah.
so I have like this series. I don't even know if it would be a series, just multiple books I have in mind that I'm going to start writing. So I think I'm going to slow down on podcasting. Still do Worship in the Storm. Still do, that's every other week. Still do the Human Race once a month, and then I'm going to be doing Bible studies every Sunday. that I'll be putting out on my Patreon, and I'll be doing the live hangouts on the Patreon as well. And I have this month I have some really really great guests. I mean, I have some real top notch people. I don't want to give too much away to the audience here tonight, but uh, I got some big people coming on. So uh,
Nice.
I don't know what the future holds for me, but I am not necessarily looking to continue to do 3 episodes a week the way that I was for the last, like, 7 months. It's been a lot, and I can handle it, but now if I'm gonna be writing, well, then I can't be podcasting, obviously.
Dude, I'm sure you've noticed here and there that sometimes you and I parallel each other or complement one another in certain situations or behaviors or patterns or experiences. But I've seen it a number of times, and I'm kind of doing something very similar right now. And I haven't said anything to anyone on air or anything, but I'll say it now. You just gave me the courage to do it. I'm writing an audio drama
Oh,
with
wow.
full-blown soundtrack and sound effects and a cast and a story and everything.
Oh,
And I
man.
think it will be partly my story, but many, many, many of my stories and many of my friends' stories and our stories. And I'm gonna try to fit it all in a way that hopefully will be entertaining and funny as hell and enjoyable. But it's gonna
Oh,
be a long time. I don't know when that's gonna happen, and I can't wait to hear what you're gonna be writing, and it's gonna be so exciting
yeah.
for everything. This community fucking rules.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, when things match up the way that they do with you, yeah, and it's so weird that the baseball thing that I didn't think
Yeah,
that you were
dude.
into baseball.
Mhm.
I mean,
Same
I
here with you.
yeah,
Actually, I
so
think I might have heard you talk about it at some point.
I think
Not
I
with
talked
me,
about with
but
Matt from The Great Deception a little
maybe.
bit.
Yes, I think you did. Yeah, I think it was you and Matt, because Matt
Yeah.
and I could go on for about baseball probably too
Yeah, because
forever.
Matt was into baseball. So, like,
Matt
what
was
I
just a
was
little bit into baseball. Yeah, just a little bit.
yeah, just a little bit. And it's funny, I didn't even tell him he's actually premiering, my episode with him on YouTube right now,
Oh, awesome.
and he talks about being a baseball coach. I think it was when he was on my podcast, he talked about being a baseball coach, or maybe it was when I was on his, I forget, but I was a softball coach, and,
That's
y
right.
yeah, so,
I
I
remember
mean
you telling me that. Yes, okay, I do remember that.
so, like, the synchronicities I got a mosquito here, this thing is bugging me. But the synchronicities when they line up like that, that's how you'd know that we're from the same God. Like whether or not like people I don't know how everything works, but I recognize my brothers and sisters
Yeah.
when they're doing or having similar thoughts as me, or in their own way, of course. But when we're doing the same things at the same time, I'm like, okay, yeah, they're my brothers, they're my sisters. I recognize them, and I don't have any problem. Like this is where Christians really have a problem is that they're like, well, they're doing something different than me. They're interpreting
Mm,
it different, so they must be wrong because I must be right. Whereas
right,
I'm like, nah, it's not supposed to be. You're Andy, I'm Todd.
right.
We're not supposed to be the same. So that's just one thing that I really recognize when somebody is, a brother or sister of mine from we're just from the same source. That's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, you really hit on something there because when you think about typical situations in life, you usually can depend on being your real self and asking the real questions and doing all those things with like your family, right? At least you can like traditionally speaking anyway. But this is a whole different thing where like I mean, you look at the past few years, families dividing, best friends of life, dividing, and then you have complete strangers suddenly coming together and having that trust in one another. You know what I mean? It's a
Mhm.
magical thing. It's a really
Yeah,
interesting thing. It's like the real organic interconnectivity of the planet, not
yeah.
the facade that they're recreating.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're recreating using the internet. It's a mimicry of what we are and the abilities that we have.
Yeah, we are the net, you
Yeah,
know?
it
And,
was.
there's some cool theories out there. I mean, I think I've proposed them sometimes where, like, At some capacity, it almost feels like we're all just staring at blank screens, or you look at people watching the news and it's just like that people watching blank screens, and it's
Watching their
just
projections.
yeah, it's just a projection from us. It's very creepy. I've had those
Wow.
experiences on LSD a number of times where it kind of showed me multiple layers of the onion at once, and it was like,
Wow.
yeah, this is really happening. There's like a war going on and there's fear everywhere, but then there's not, because it's all a facade, and it's on so many different levels too. I think that's why a lot of times in this community where we're constantly seeking answers, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds sometimes, or fall for bullshit,
Yeah.
or one after another, because yeah, I don't know. It's constant.
Well, it's interesting because LSD to me was like it was part of the Matrix. It was like the imposter in me. It really brought the imposter out of me,
Mm,
and it made me feel very alien in my body. It didn't make me feel like in touch with God the way psilocybin with
right.
all the different things that that make you get in touch with God. It didn't do that to me. It was some wild experiences, but the overarching feeling that it gave me was that it was alien, that it was it brought I just felt alien. That's just how it was. It was super strange.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a lot of times on LSD where I could never, it would never go. I'd never really peak on LSD. It's an interesting thing where it was always this like much more mild psilocybin trip to me. Psilocybin was the most intense trips ever, other than
Mhm.
DMT, and well, salvia is pretty intense, but it's short lived.
Oh,
But
Salvia's
woo,
terrifying.
terrifying. Yeah, we could talk salvia a lot. I mean, I did a lot of salvia, almost out of like, it's almost like getting punched in the face. Like it's just this dare we used to do at parties. It was ridiculous. It wasn't even
Oh,
a
wow.
a real trip to us. But then, like it wasn't like I wasn't appreciating tripping back then for like, inner work or anything. It was that I couldn't get any work done out of salvia. And then
Mm,
later on, I did hear that there were, traditional uses of it, and there was practices and traditions around it. I never looked into it though, because it was always
yeah,
just such a punch in the face. It was like you do it and you just get swept into this like alternate cartoon
yeah.
for like
5
not
minutes.
not really long enough to reorient yourself even with disorientation. It was always weird. I never got the
What did
hang
you
of it,
use, the
but I always
20X?
enjoyed it. I did 5x, I did 20x, I did 50x, and then I was told I did something like 400x, but I don't even know if that's real.
The highest I ever saw was 80, but I never did. I did it one time, I did 20X,
Mhm.
and man, like you said, it was a cartoon, but it wasn't just a cartoon, I was me, and then all of a sudden and I've seen this before, but I could never find the picture afterwards. It's like, that lotus flower that just keeps opening up and it's inside of it, it's more
It's
opening up and it's
fractal.
smaller and smaller. Yeah, but that was me. My whole thing, it's not even my body, it was my whole being that kept
Mm.
doing that until I was this tiny little piece. And then I was this marijuana bud that was on my coffee table, and next to the marijuana bud was a salvia, a little tiny little salvia bud, and it was my cousin, and it had my cousin's voice, and we were then all of a sudden, like when I was down there, we were in my home from the 90s, which was my parents' home. We were there with the brown carpet. It was ugly brown carpet we had, and we were watching The Simpsons. And then all of a sudden, I heard my aunt's voice, and I look over, and so this is when I started coming back, and it was like in between because you're only there very briefly. Uh, I look over, and it's this smoke monster is like coming in through from outside, but then like now that I'm realizing, like I was seeing this like monster that was huge, but then the me that I am here, I was seeing the smoke that I just blew out was still leaving. Like it was still leaving the apartment because I blew it towards the door. So it scared me. So then I went and hid my face in the couch, and I was like, I'm never doing that again because it
Wow. Yeah, that shit was really crazy.
so it was crazy. Like remember distinctly being in my parents' house with the ugly brown carpet, with the old ass coffee table, with the old TV, watching The Simpsons in the 1990s while that happened. And it was so brief. And I was a little piece of marijuana, and my cousin was a little piece of salvia. And no one else was with me, when this happened, but it was his voice and it was his mom's voice, and his mom was the smoke, which was so weird.
That's awesome. Yeah, that whole scale thing, that's some crazy shit. I think it was the comedian Ralphie May that once said, if you want to get an idea of what taking psychedelics is like, I can't remember how he set it up, but he was talking about the difference between carpet and linoleum. It's like, oh, you're not afraid of heights? Have you ever been on LSD and there was a room that went from carpet to linoleum? You find out real quick that scale is also perception is everywhere, you know,
Yeah,
because
scale and variance.
yeah, man, and the whole thing you said about you being like the lotus flower, that's very curious because I've had that experience even on psilocybin. And it was like I vanished. And that's why years after um taking psychedelics and reading tons of books, I came to Douglas Hofstadter's book, I Am a Strange Loop. And I read that and I put that book down and I started reading like Harry Potter. I started drinking a shitload and I stopped reading nonfiction for a long time because that I Am a Strange Loop book was all about the fractal nature of reality that I love to talk about. And yeah, it was like exactly my tripping experiences, like what reality was trying to tell me over and over again that I kept ignoring for all the pretty colors and craziness.
Yeah.
It always ended up being this weird fractal disappearance of even self. It was oof.
Dude,
Ooh.
have you ever smoked DMT?
Yes, well, not many, 3 times.
Yeah, I've done it 3 times as well. It's interesting.
Hmm.
The first time I didn't break through, and
Yeah.
then the next day I did it again and I broke through. And what ended up happening is, firstly, reality just started bubbling away. It turned into bubbles and it was right in front of my face, and I just got like ill because I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't look at this." So I closed my eyes, but it was so I was looking at like my door jamb. So if you can see my door over here,
Mhm.
like the side of it, I was looking at that and it just opened, and it was a whole new dimension in there. And it was like and that's so like everything started bubbling away. Like as this opened, everything's bubbling away. And then it was uh, like blueprint world. Like I could have stepped into the blueprint world, but then I was like, I closed my eyes and laid back. I was like, I'm not doing that. Then another time, I don't know. So I think maybe when I was the salvia, when I smoked the salvia, it was my coffee table. So when I did that, when I ended up on the coffee table, my coffee table opened up and I saw the dimension in there. And then I had the thought afterwards, I was like, oh, they have dimensions because, we call it dimensions. If it's an inch wide and an inch high, there are dimensions of it. So I
Right.
was like, oh, of course, there's other worlds in there. And I started realizing, like, yeah, we are God and everything else is smaller than us. We think everything else is larger than us, but actually we're the highest that you could possibly go. Well, that's why we're kings of this place, because everything else outside of here, like this is a bubble within a bubble, right?
Right, right.
And everything else outside of here is vying to become supreme the way we are supreme for this realm, but none of them are supreme where they are. But that's why they need us to create for them.
Oh, that was beautiful, man.
Yeah, we're the supreme leaders. We're the image of God. We're like this
Right.
microcosm inside
Yes.
of a much larger, like, earth realm that would be called heaven, like, the seventh dimension. That's how I
Yeah.
like to think of it as. And we can create whatever. We just have to actually do it, which is different
We have to do
than
the
what
work.
we think. Yeah.
Right. And I think that ties into, or we can tie it into, the Sumerian stories of the Anunnaki kings saying, the work is too hard, the work is too toilsome for us, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
why they needed the Ajiji.
Yeah.
That's why they brought the Ajiji with them. Who, I need to look into the Ajiji a lot more, and if anyone out there listening knows about the Ajiji specifically, because there's not a lot written about it, but it's a group of people that were the slaves before we were created,
Right.
supposedly. Whatever that myth really turns out to be. But regardless, there's that's always been there, that idea of the work being very difficult here, dense physical reality. I remember psychedelics always made me feel, when I was thinking about it, at least when I really focused on it, your body is heavy and clunky and you could feel your bones moving inside. And even without drugs, man, you can do it through meditation, or they have these crazy soundproof rooms that are like the most soundproof ever. And if you know, block your eyes and you go in the dark or whatever, and you go in there for a while, you can start hearing your blood move around. Sounds like freight trains in your head. It's crazy stuff, man. Like the physical three-dimensional world is just brutal, but you don't realize it. But then,
Dude,
of course, through that psychedelic experience, I also ended up having my body feel amazing and incredible after transmuting all sorts of negative emotion and this
yeah.
and that. You could realign with the structure of this damn dense place, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, I was just about to say that when you start transmuting, you start to have psychedelic experiences without the psychedelics. Like, I
Yeah,
would have psychedelic experiences, like, long after I had taken psychedelics, like
right.
weeks. Like, it
Yeah.
was like I was catching up to it physically or something. That, like, I was driving home one time on the highway, and all of a sudden I could feel all of the cars and trucks on my head, and I realized, oh, my head is the earth that's being driven on, and what I'm feeling, the little brain cells, are what I'm seeing move in front of me. And like, I felt shorter ones when they were cars, and when one would zoom by, like, it would really go by really quick on my head. And then if it was a truck that was going by, like, it would go by slower, but it would be a longer feeling. Like, I could see outside of me and feel inside of me exactly it's the same. And I don't know why that started happening that way, but once I started making the connection that everything was happening out there and in here at the same time, it was incredible. I would get text messages. There was this one time, it was a Friday, I was on my way home, and I was about to get a text message at 3 different points, and my head, it would, like, wiggle just a little bit on top of my head, and then the text message would come in, and then it did it again, and then the text message came in. It was like I was receiving it in here before it hit, before it hit
Mm,
here. And it was a strange time because it was when I was still a softball coach. I was still a truck driver. I was actually filling vending machines at the time. It was before COVID hit. And so it was like before my awakening, but it was just at the beginning when I just started gaining all of these psychic abilities. Like, I look at that as a precursor to my psychic connection. I don't even look at psychic abilities as psychic abilities anymore. I just look at it as uh, recognizing life on a higher level than just being physical. and you
Bingo.
start making new connections. So it was a weird time for me, but it was so amazing. It was like I could drive my truck. This was another really crazy part because I meditated in my work truck every day for a half hour, listening to that Kanye album, Jesus is King, for
Mhm.
at least a half hour every morning for months. And what ended up happening is I could, like, drive that truck with my eyes closed. I could just move it with my mind almost. It was so crazy, like, if somebody was in my way, what that was going too slow, I would just in my mind, I would shift like I was saying, I could feel the different cars and trucks on top of my head. Well, I would
Mhm.
just, like, be able to shift that over from the lane that I'm in into the next lane, and they would move over for me. And it was
Oh,
like
man, I think you told me that before too.
yeah, it was just so crazy, like, I was so connected with that truck, it was so amazing.
I'm trying to look for the name of this man, so at least we can give it to the audience because this dude's awesome. It's right on the tip of my tongue, but you were talking about, receiving before the physical act occurred, and there's so many scientific studies that are being done on, like, receiving information in the brain before it happens in reality, and
Mhm.
I'm just trying to find this guy's name. He was a guest on the Brothers of the Serpent podcast last year, and he's awesome. I can't remember his friggin' name, but he's like a really great author, and he talks about all this stuff, and he does experiments in the lab with people and shows how this actually happens and how we can actually follow it on a scientific level, that it's real, it's really happening, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that's really happening. I mean, that's what's got me to where I am, so, that's why testimony is so important, and even though it's hard to take someone's testimony, I
Mhm.
mean, you can just see my life anyway is definitely that there's things
Oh,
to it.
absolutely. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Yeah, I'll have to find that guy's name at another time because this ain't good radio or video, just me scrolling through this shit. But yeah, I got turned on to that guy. He was one of the scientists that was involved with that "What the Bleep Do We Know" documentary back in the day. Did you ever see that?
I have not.
It was like
I
a really shitty, like it was produced like kind of low, it looked low budget, really bad graphics and acting and stuff like that at times, but there was tons of interviews about quantum physics and spirituality and stuff like that. But
hmm.
it turned out to be very culty, I guess. At least part of it was very new agey and probably took away from what was really going on. But there was some good scientists in there that like had a lot of good things to say. And he was talking about this field that was just present at all times. And that was hitting on all cylinders for me because that's what Sykes showed me. I came back from those trips knowing that every glorious thing that they're talking about in all the crazy books from ancient history was happening here now in our present. It was beautiful, and it's just happening on levels that you can only access if you find them.
Yeah, that is very true if you find them. Let me so okay, let's switch gears a little bit
Sure, man.
into the moon. Now
Ooh.
now did you hear about this Chinese the shell of a Chinese missile that hit the moon today?
Yeah, was that today? I missed it.
Well,
I
it's yeah,
happened to
it's
miss that CGI, real life moonfall situation.
right, that's what I'm about to get into because I watched that movie today. So,
Oh, you did?
yeah.
Was it at least a fun CGI mess?
Uh, I mean, so I the when I watched it, it was on the Fire Stick, and it was like someone recorded it at the movie theater, so it wasn't great. I
Fair
mean,
enough.
it was terrible, but like it was so stupid. Like they're walking through the snow, then all of a sudden they're like just happened to be at the kids like stepfather's house that's a mansion, and then just
It's one of those.
yeah, like they broke down in a vehicle, and then oh, they're just okay. Like it
Yeah,
just keeps happening.
you're describing all Roland Emmerich movies.
Right. Yeah, everything just keeps going their way, so but that's what is on Earth. But the stuff that happens on the moon, it's very cool actually. And if they took out the stupid Earth stuff, it would have been a better movie. Maybe not.
Mhm.
I don't know. But
Yeah, because it
uh
looked like they were getting into some kind of, graphene stuff or like,
oh yeah.
black goo sort of technology.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
That's
I saw that in the
okay.
preview for a split second. I was like, "Oh, snap. I gotta see
Yeah.
this."
Yeah. Well, so the main character, he's not very funny, but they try to make him out to be, and
Yeah,
I
it's the dude
guess
from the Conjuring films, right?
oh, I don't know, was he?
Yeah, he's a decent actor. He's not
Heavyset
bad.
dude?
Oh, maybe not. Oh, you're t that guy. Yeah, the dude
Yeah,
that played
yeah.
Sam in Game of Thrones.
Okay, yeah,
The
yeah,
nerdy one? Yeah,
not the, good-looking dude. Yeah, no, no, not
I
I know
got
what you're
you,
talking
yeah.
about, yeah. Yeah, no, that dude, he's a pretty good actor, and,
He's not bad.
Halle Berry, she's alright in it too.
Mm.
But it's so weird because whatever.
Of what's
Uh,
happening exactly with the friggin' moon right now where something's crashing
yeah,
into it.
that is the weird part. Okay, so what ends up happening today, if anyone's not familiar, is we can't see it. We don't know what happened because it hit the dark side of the moon.
Oh,
The dark
convenient.
side of the moon. So there's been a Chinese, we'll say space junk because they don't know for sure. They think it's a Chinese shell of a missile, but they are just calling it space junk. Is going 5,800 miles per hour. It's been in orbit for 7 years now. Since 2015, it's been in orbit, which is very interesting. In my life, 7 years ago is when I was arrested, and I was in jail 7 years ago at this time. And it was May the 5th, which is Cinco de Mayo, or yeah, I think it was Cinco de Mayo is when I finally prayed to God. So it was like right in this time where I started to have a break 7 years ago from where I was to where I was going on. But anyway, that's just like because we were talking about the psychedelics earlier,
Yeah, yeah.
and making the connections. So this rocket hits the moon today, apparently at 5,800 miles per hour, and the math says it's going to leave between a 33 and a 66-foot crater. Yes, yes, those numbers, of course.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love how accurate science is.
yeah,
NASA's the
33 and
best.
66 has to be.
Never a straight answer.
Yeah.
Good
So
old NASA.
right. So okay. Now this movie comes out. Obviously, they've known about this for 7 years now, right?
Yeah,
This movie comes
absolutely.
out exactly 1 month before February 4th. The movie comes out March 4th. The moon gets hit.
That's ridiculous.
It's very strange. So what happens in this movie? So this is going to be a spoiler for anybody who is watching at home.
Yeah, don't worry, there's probably no big spoilers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the
It's an
graphene
action
oxide.
movie.
Yeah, if you're here watching this, you don't care about the acting. So what ends up happening is in 2011 there was this is according to the movie what happened there. There was this space mission that was happening, and this blob just of like black goo just goes by and ends up killing an astronaut, and the guy who ends up saving the day, he gets blamed saying it was his negligence that he killed the astronaut, and then he gets ostracized on earth, but I don't care about the storyline. But anyway, he gets a second chance because and he's some loser, whatever. I don't even want to talk about the movie part. He goes into space again. He gets a second chance to go into space with his old astronaut who he saved her life. But while the other astronaut died, he saved Halle Berry's life. And now she's like director of NASA, and they go up to space together with the fat guy. So
The director of NASA just takes off to space. Is this a
okay,
Roland Emmerich? This has to be a Roland Emmerich movie.
I don't know, but there's so
I'm
much
finding
to
out.
it, like why it happens this way that I don't even want to talk about the storyline. It's
That's
stupid.
fine. That's fine. Get
But
to the black goo.
yeah, so what ends up happening is there's this black goo. So, okay, they get to the moon. They realize that the black goo is going after humans with technology. That the only reason he was able to survive is because the power was killed. So he flew and landed. Yeah, this is what they say. He landed the NASA rocket back to Earth without any power the entire time. He just somehow flew it back to Earth from zero
Naturally,
gravity. Yeah, yeah. So this
because
thing
he's
only,
the hero.
yeah. So the thing only can attack biological uh entities when they're using technology. It just seeks them out. It's like it smells it almost, like a dog. It just senses it and it goes after and kills them.
Mhm.
So the inside the moon is a man-made structure, and it is this. Well, it's not man-made. It's quote unquote aliens, but our
Artificial.
ancestors. Yeah. So what it is, if you've ever seen that one movie, I don't even know what it's called, so it's a bad reference, but there's all these spinning devices going on around
Event
each other.
Horizon.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's one of them. There's
Larry
another one.
Fishburne, Sam Neill.
That's not even the one I was talking
Oh,
about,
it's not
but
even the one. That opens a
now
black
there's
hole in
like
that
three
one.
of them
Oh, no
that
shit.
have it, and it's like time
Hmm.
travel. It's like opens up a wormhole or something, a portal.
Mhm.
So that's what they're saying is inside of the moon, because at the core of the moon is a white dwarf. Now, this white dwarf is uh, giving power to everything else. That the white dwarf is the consciousness of humanity. That it's that
Whoa.
it's inside this false structure because there's this war that was going on between, so humanity had evolved to a place with AI, and it was complete harmony. They were hundreds and thousands of years, they were at complete peace, and they were just in love, and they built this great society that we couldn't imagine. And then one day, all of a sudden, all of the AI just snapped and realized they were enslaved by a race that was lesser than them. So it was like this billions-year old war that was taking place, and there are thousands of these black goo squid looking things that have been searching out biological life using technology because they just sense it out. Well, somehow they said our moon is the only moon that survived because the last thing that the humans did were create all of these artificial structures with the consciousness as their center, the white dwarf as their center, and the artificial intelligence attacked all of them except for ours. Ours is the only one that made it. And eventually, the moon being in orbit led to the ice being melted away, water being moved, the land being created. And with the land being, the waters receding so that the land was there, then they took their DNA because they were only consciousness at that point because they're only the white dwarf. So it's only consciousness that's going on. So it's a battle of consciousness versus machine. And
Huh.
they replicate DNA using the hominid beings that naturally evolved from Earth and mix the DNA, however, just consciously.
Anunnaki.
Yeah, that type of thing. And they so then humanity ends up having the technology, and then one of these squid things that there's thousands of, one of these black goo squid monsters comes in and is attacking. So they end up killing it with an EMP inside of the moon, and the fat guy, he becomes part of the consciousness because the consciousness scanned its brain. So the consciousness has like this technology that's like so much better than the AI. It's the only thing that can stop the AI, but it's like this pure consciousness that just like scans things and makes them better all of a sudden. It wakes them up, it gives them oxygen that's more pure. It does like all of this different stuff. So it was a really cool concept. And then I'm thinking about what happened today and the thoughts that are running through my mind, these intuitive thoughts that are just telling me, like, well, maybe they're just pretending to have all this war stuff going on to trick the AI because now the AI has invaded the human bodies, through the black goo, through the left eye, through
Mm.
some of the plunges that have gone in people. Uh, this graphene oxide is trying to take over our bodies to be us. And it has successfully done so in large parts of government and media all over the world. And in order to not let it know what's going on, they have to create this completely false reality on our screens so that it's tricking the AI into thinking that things are going one way when it's actually not going that way. And like this rocket didn't just hit by accident, and it didn't just get released, 2 days before on accident. It was they were holding the information back that possibly that humanity is actually working together to take out this AI monster, and it's the only way to do it is to deceive everybody because they're trying to take out pieces without letting the rest of it know that it's being taken out. So it's like
Mm.
all of this deception is going on for our own benefit, and like
Mm.
these exercises, as Pompeo called COVID an exercise, that
Mhm.
of wearing masks, maybe it's because it's normalizing it so that when we will actually have to wear masks and people will be ready for it and used to it, and there will actually be viruses where we need vaccines for it, and
Mm.
so on. So it was just like this weird slew of thoughts that was coming to me that this was just like a test run of something that is gonna happen.
It could be. Jesus, I hope not. I don't know. I mean, everybody says it's only going to get worse before it gets
Oh
better.
yeah, it's
You
definitely gonna
know,
get worse.
it's moving like molasses. I don't like how it's going to pick up when the election season comes around. You know what I mean? It's going to suddenly feel like the end is nigh and we got to turn it all around right now. It's always going to do that to us if we pay attention to the talking box, to all the media. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't typically cover like political talk anyway on the deep share, but yeah, it's useless. It really is. I mean, it's not completely useless, but I guess it needs to be. I don't know. Do any of us need to know? Maybe just to know where the hell they are for when we can take them over. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I and
Just
I
turn it
think
all off. You know.
And I think that, like, since they've been using soft disclosure through pop culture for so long, that the AI doesn't register it in the same way that it would the news because it doesn't react. People don't react to it the same way. So I think maybe that's why it's been being released to us in that way, so that to trick the AI because it's not our hardware is not just going to come alive. And maybe it could. Maybe like the Allspark and Transformers. Maybe that is a thing. I'm not counting out anything, but I know that within the parameters of the software is this energy that is not us. That these are interdimensional devices. We're using it to talk to each other, to talk to
Right.
this audience, and it's it really weirds me out. So
Yeah.
what do
What?
you think about NASA and Princeton getting the 24 theologians uh to have disclosure for aliens? What do you think that's about?
I think it's I wasn't really surprised by it. I didn't really find anything too shocking about it because I kind of figured you got a couple things going on. On one level, you have the public facing um damage control people that want to make sure they're being inclusive. And regardless of atheist or Christian, even everyone across the norm spectrum that's interested in space and all that, they're willing to hug their Christian brother, even if they're an atheist, and look at the cool rocket going up into the sky. You know what I mean? For the most part, that's been embedded in us too for years and years. How, space travel and our future is gonna, you know, that's what's gonna weave religion and science together and stuff like that. Where it was always actually religious and spiritual prowess that got us the scientific method, and the scientific revolution itself was people trying to figure out our circumstances, and most of those scientists all believed in God.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
Well, I guess kind of,
What did you
about
ask it again?
what did you think about the
Oh,
theologians?
well, so yeah, what did I think? I think it was very typical. I think it
Yeah.
made perfect sense that they would include them. Now, on another level, we know that the Catholic Church itself is very corrupt and most likely atheistic anyway,
Mhm.
um, in a very
Especially the
negative,
Vatican.
horrible way. Yeah, especially the Vatican. So that isn't surprising at all. There's revolving doors with these industries now.
Yeah.
And the Catholic Church is an industry.
And it's super interesting, well, if we wanna talk about biblical nature here, is that the Bible talks about Satan is probably a Leviathan, which is this blacker than black, uh, dragon, as it's called, of the sea, of chaos, of space, with space is a sea.
Mhm.
And this black goo is blacker than black.
Right.
So is that the Satan that they're talking about? And is that Saturn still, with this black cube? I mean, I think it's all one and the same actually, but it's just used in different references because for whatever reason, maybe the black cube is the Allspark. That's an idea that I'm just having right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about how we, especially in the conspiracy community and a lot of spiritual places, we look at secret societies that hold on to the ancient wisdom of whatever the hell is actually going on in this reality, or at least what the brightest of our ancients figured out or were told or whatever. These secret societies are clearly there for that,
Mhm.
regardless of who's running them and this and that. But we always look at them in a cryptic, evil way, regardless. You know what I mean? Because the truth is definitely, first of all, it's not positive, but it's not negative. It's not, it's just amoral. Like it's just, there's no, there's no morality to it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's just neutral and it's frightening and it's deep and it's dark and it makes no sense. It's a paradox and it scares the living shit out of you. You know what I mean? The depths of it. So yeah, I don't know. It's always been kind of like that. It's always been perceived that way anyway.
Yeah. It's interesting that the Vatican, they worship like the Anunnaki. They started doing at the baby in the manger. I forget what the scene's called. Jesus in the manger as a baby last, not this past Christmas, but the one before that. It was an Anunnaki scene. It was super weird.
Really?
Yeah.
So I mean, and I get that you really can't try to use that even for people that are on the fence. Be like, look what they did. Because the front-facing explanation does make enough sense, because we know that the Catholic Church has been preaching, combining religions and
Yeah.
being more open and accepting, which on one level sounds really nice. Sure, 15 years ago, I would have been cheering for this guy, like, "He's a scientist, priest, it's awesome."
Right.
But, it's very typical.
Yeah. It's super weird. And if Satan is this black goo monster, and Satan's son is going to be the Antichrist uh, that reigns before, then it's going to be some kind of black goo uh, hybrid, human hybrid that's going to have these magical powers somehow, but it's uh, it's going to be very strange because things are so weird. So let me throw this idea. Yeah, this is a weird one. They tell us the truth in plain sight, right?
Yeah.
But they don't present it as if that's what it is. Well,
Yeah.
you take Nas, right, and then you take Little Nas X. Well, X stands for what? The number 10.
Right.
So Little Nas number 10, could that be his 10th clone or his 10th the clone of his son, like the 10th clone of his son that now they made him in the way that he is. They've created him in a lab essentially, and he has these different characteristics that he's a good rapper, singer, whatever, and he's like the only one that became famous out of all of them because he had these natural abilities. Like, is that something that they could do? Sincerely think that that is exactly what goes on with these cloning labs. That when you see like Meghan Markle and AOC and who was Hillary Clinton's assistant, how they all look very similar.
Oh
Like you
yeah.
see pictures of them next to each other, you're like, are they all clones of one another? That I saw this reality TV show. Someone sent me a video of it where this girl said, "Oh, I'm not jealous of other girls because I'm a clone. So I was biologically made to to not be jealous of everyone else. But I wish that or they think that I'm too smart, that they want me dumber than what I am." Something like that. It was so weird, but she was very robotic, clone moving, like it was
Hmm.
very weird stuff. But I think that's really what goes on a mass scale that we're not aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked into the cloning stuff. That's one side of our crazy wild world. I
It's the
haven't.
craziest.
I'm sure it's one of them, and I know that there's plenty of really intense, material out there to dig into. I don't dismiss it, but it is interesting too that like this is where we're assigning an experience or an observation to how do I even say this? This this conundrum might be happening on like a higher level because like to me it's when I was growing up, even before psychedelics, but then afterwards, big time, thinking about always about how there's only so many faces out there. Like
Yes.
there's an actor I think you look like. Like there's an actor I think you look like. Like there's only so many configurations. And I
Well,
know that in some circles, we can definitely take it to extreme levels and keep it within this three-dimensional experience. Like we have a group that's manipulating and cloning people. And we do have some intense material that you can look into about cloning, like I said. But at the same time, I always thought it was very interesting when I thought about it from a fractal point of view too,
right.
that there might be an original group of
Yes.
people.
An original 13, maybe.
Ooh, and it's that's always where it's taken me because again, you were mentioning earlier, like all the deception is for our benefit. That's a deep driven thought that I've tried to get rid of over and over and over again, but it keeps sticking around. Even my wife, Kate, will be like, she'll even get flustered if, she tries to bring up like, well, what about the child sex trafficking and stuff? I'm like, well,
Right.
no, I'm not trying to say that it's not. And she's like, well, it's like wicked passionate. It's like, yeah, no, this is really hard to get my mind around too. I don't even know what I'm saying exactly,
Right.
but there's still something to it. I can't deny it. That there's something going on another level. That's the thing. We cross levels. We have an
Yeah.
observation in the conspiracy world and we go, well, that might be this over here on like a linear scale, right across in the physical with a consequence we can understand and like people and players. But what if we're mixing that? What if we're mixing the
Yes.
different scales? And
Yeah.
that's why we never get good answers for our conspiracies, or we never get conclusions, because we're taking something that we're observing from one point of view in like the very dense physical, say, like an outcome of something that's actually going on a higher level, a higher dimension, a deeper dimension, should I say? I'd rather say deeper than
Right.
higher, because well, I don't know if we're all one or whatever, but it's within that has the many different levels of reality.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
don't
and
know
I
if any of
didn't
that
clap
made sense,
there,
but
just so
no,
anybody
he
knows.
killed a
I was
mosquito. He took a life.
well, I was trying to anyway. Yeah, the bloodsuckers.
Yeah, vampires are okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think it's both. I think there are
Yeah, it's both.
clones and it's a fractal nature. So it's just the same set of things being replayed over here and over here and over here. And not everyone, it's not ever a one-to-one scale. Like when we were talking about earlier, how like we're brothers because we're both doing the same things at the same time. That you are me, I am you on a different
Absolutely, and we are all
scale.
together. Cuckoo,
Yeah.
cuckoo.
Yeah, you're in the Northeast, I'm in the Southeast, or even when I was in the Northeast, you're in Massachusetts, I was in Philly,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just happening in neighborhoods are the same way. It's this fractal nature of life. And then what they do is they clone us and they mimic it somewhere else and it becomes that the same exact way for maybe not the same exact way, but very close to it. Like I've encountered uh in my meditations, and I haven't gotten into it too much on my show or anything, but the cloning facilities, and I encountered one time where uh, a pop culture singer she murdered me because I wouldn't have sex with her because that's what they used me as a sex object and
Mm.
I wouldn't and she just straight up murdered me. And then they just then I just woke up in another body behind that one and she forced herself on me. And it was very strange. I mean, I look around and there's all these clones just there. Like all of a sudden
Mm.
I realize that there's tons and tons of clones. And then as I've been waking up and as I've been podcasting, I've seen people who the first thought in my mind is like in a very intuitive thought is that's my clone. Like a lot of times I've had
Oh,
that
shit.
come across like that person looks like me and they're saying similar things to me and they've had similar experiences like it's just really weird and it's not to take away from anyone else and their experience or anything and uh it's not anyone I've ever talked to. I don't think that
Right,
I
right.
could talk to them. It would be a very weird thing, but it's just when you see that and you follow your intuition and you have the intuitive thought that that's my clone. Like that's a very weird thought to have.
Mm. Yeah, and then I talked to Human Vibration last year from Realize Radio, and
Mhm.
she talks a lot about like kind of the everything fake movement kind of thing, but at the same
Yeah.
time, that shit's so misunderstood. Her and her two other co-hosts have been misunderstood online and stuff like that here and there because the message is not that everything is fake and that's just going to be nihilism. It's that everything you put out there is real and everything that you're experiencing is real and there's just so much fake shit thrown at us. And the evidence that she pulls out on some things is kind of terrifying, with John Benet Ramsey and all
Yeah.
this symbolism there, and from a different point of view than our typical, a lot of us love to decode ancient symbolism and stuff, and they're
It's
kind of
the
decoding
technology
the modern
side.
world,
Yeah.
and it's really cool. So the templates, people are templates, and like faces that look similar are templates. I do like that idea, and I think the closer to physical dense reality you get, the more sinister it has to be, because otherwise it isn't possible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? it has to be, and then it gets more energetic or deeper, should I say, where it's all flowing from the one, and then we're all kind of branching off from there, and then we have this idea of the 13. Very possible, man. I have another weird memory slash psychedelic experience, thought, whatever, that it's a bunch of us that have always loved each other, and the only real people are just sitting around a writer's room writing about this experience we're going to have that we're not going to remember ourselves writing. We're like dropping
Wow.
ourselves into a real like an RPG. But I had this feeling of like, yeah, but it was like, it was all the real people out there, the real ones that were just, and it wasn't a lot of them. And it was like almost like a writer's room. Like, yeah, what if this happened? And yeah, all these weird things. And that's why, like, you get further and further and further out there, and the answers seem to be vaguer and vaguer and vaguer because, like, maybe they're writing it right now.
Or maybe we're writing it when we go to sleep.
So that's an idea. I mean, that's when the subconscious takes over.
Dude,
Man.
all right. So before we get off here, I've had two really weird dreams the last 2 nights.
Okay.
And this is something that I've never done before, but I've seemed to have done it every night of March so far, is that I have woken up in the middle of the night to take a drink or go to the bathroom. I wake up every night multiple times, grab a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, right before I laid back down to go to sleep, I called Jesus in and said, please come into my dreams and clean up that world the way you have done to my physical life. The first 2 nights, yeah, and I don't know why I did that either. It was just like
Random
I just
thought.
yeah, it was like the first 2 nights, I don't even know if I was awake when I did it, but I just remembered doing it. It was just like one of those weird things. So last night, or actually not last night, the night before, I have this dream and I tweeted this out. It was a very weird
Oh, yeah, yeah.
sequence. So
Tell it.
so this woman and okay, so there's this I'm in this house of this little suburb, some kind of like unit of housing that's everything looks the same everywhere. And I'm in this house and I'm with I think it was just like one woman or maybe it was her husband, but like it was nothing was going on. I went to the store, I come back, and then there's all these cars. I can't even park on the street. I'm like, what? Like I was gone 5 minutes. So then I park up on the grass. I walk back in, and whoever's house it was, I never got to see whose house it was because then there's this woman and man and her two adult sons and her adult daughter, and they're there, and the woman says, I invited 50 to 60 people for an orgy. And I'm like, what? I was like, that doesn't.
That's some
I was
fucking
like,
news.
and I'm like, why are her kids here?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, but they were all adults, but she's like, oh, that's just what we do. And I'm like, whoa, okay, this is weird. Then she hands me MDMA, and I'm like, I'm not gonna take this. And the one son ends up taking it, and nobody else shows up. And so they're so the host, I can't see the host who it is or if it's a man or woman or what it is, but they're sitting on a chair up against a wall. Then the mother is next to her, then the father is next to her, and then the daughter is next to him. And then the two sons, I never even saw the one son. He was upstairs the entire time. But the one son that I did see, he had this very old Nokia phone that he was showing me. He's like, look, we got to use these phones here. They're really cool. And, uh, you can't use your phone here. You have to use this one here. And he was like using it. And I'm like, well, that's weird. But it was a cell phone, but it wasn't a smartphone. So it was a very weird thing. He's the one that takes MDMA. And the daughter convinces me that I have to be halfway in, halfway out in order to guide him because he's going to be lost if I don't. So, like, using my wanting to help against me. So I take it. And as soon as I put it in my tongue and I'm across the room from her, I put it in my mouth, it hits my tongue. Then all of a sudden I'm like thrust in front of her face and I spit it out. And I have like this tube, but it's in like a Slim Jim wrapper. You know what a Slim Jim?
Mm-hmm.
You know how it has like that red, like kind of wax paper thing?
Yeah.
Well, it was like it was full of whatever the drug was, and I just pushed it right out. And then I grabbed her forearms with my hands. She grabbed my forearms. It was like we were locked in like this, and we were like, it was an intense stare. And God started speaking to us, and we could feel the vibrations as if it was a speaker that was right over top of our heads speaking to us. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, I'm used to telepathic communication, so I'm like, okay, I hear this, and I see the way she's reacting, and she's hearing it. And he says, "Don't you ever give my son drugs again." And she was freaked out, and she's like, "No, no, no, that couldn't have been God." And then I went over to her mother, and I grabbed her mother's arms, and then I said it out loud, and I said, "Don't ever give me MDMA again." And I look over at the daughter. I said, "Did it sound like that?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Yeah, because God told you that shit. Like I just made God just commanded you. Like that wasn't me. That was God that commanded you." That shit was so crazy. Then I woke up, but it was like they were trying to I don't know, they were something wherever I was, it felt like I was in someone else's life. Like it's felt so real. It did not feel like just a dream
Yeah, sounds
because
lucid.
yeah, very, very. And I've never had a lucid dream before. Then after that, it's like I'm in a new scenario and then I'm in a war. I'm in the middle of a war and I don't know what's going on. Someone's firing a gun at us, and it's like one of those really heavy rounds that are just spitting like poof, 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 poof.
Mm-hmm.
And I see where it's coming from, and this like bus goes in front of me and it's going straight towards the bullets, but he's not getting hit. So then I'm in like some kind of van, and then I just turned right, and then I woke up. That was weird. So then
Damn.
yeah, super weird. So then the dream I had last night, walking through like the street, but it's not like a street you drive down. It's just a street that, for people to walk down. And there's like restaurant tables there. And it's me and my daughter, and we're walking down the street. This table's in the middle of our way. She tries going around the one way. She can't go around that way. And these like teenage boys, a little bit older than her, start like making fun of her. And I'm like, I was like, you guys don't even know her. Like, why would you talk to somebody that way? And then like some guy like that's not even with the family like comes up and is like, "Are you sure you're fit to be her father?" Like like these weird things like the entire time like we're walking from place to place through streets, and then we're in a courtyard. These guys just like pop up out of nowhere, and they're trying to convince me that like I shouldn't be her father, that I should just give her to them. And then I remember, okay, so then Mimi woke up, and then I woke up, right? And uh she said something, she goes, "Oh, you can just go back to sleep." So I went back to sleep. So then I'm in the like a courtyard, and the guy from the first time is like there. So these like three guys come up, and they have knives before the other guy gets there. These three guys come up, and they're like young 20s or like late teens. They come up, and they're like trying to like intimidate me. And there's this box of frying oil, shortening oil. And I pick it up, and I'm like, "All right, Maya, you got to run." To my daughter, I tell her, I'm like, "You got to go." And so I pick it up, and the one like leader of these three kids is like, "What do you got there?" And I'm like, "It's gasoline." And I was so then I go to take off the top, and they just take off running. So they take off running, the two guys that popped up out of nowhere the first time and the second time show up, but and the guy from the first time is like to my back, and the guy from the second time is like he's way across the courtyard. So I'm just holding this box, and he knows it's not gasoline. He's not afraid of it. But I see he has a hammer on him, and I just say, Jesus, please help me. And then a safe falls out of the sky on this guy. Like a safe the size of me falls on him.
That's
And then
great.
yeah, and I look over and a safe this that's happening everywhere, falling on all I don't know who else it fell on, but it wasn't falling on me, and I fell on the two guys that I needed it to fall on, and I was like, that was like, yeah, but it was like Jesus is like really cleaning up my dreams. Whatever's been happening in my dreams, it's ending now.
Nice, dude. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say something like that and figure it out. I would like to bring my dreams back because, yeah, I know marijuana suppresses dreams,
Yeah.
and but at the same time, I know plenty of people that smoke plenty of pot and have plenty of dreams. So
Oh yeah.
I just got to clean out some cobwebs or something.
Yeah, it's crazy because I never used to dream, and I stopped smoking months, well, I
Right.
guess about like 7 months ago or so, and
Mhm.
I've been having crazier and crazier dreams, and like I've never said that in the to go to sleep. And I tell my clients that have issues going to sleep, I'm like, yeah, pray before you go to bed, ask for protection, but like to do it in the middle of sleeping and being able to call up to Jesus 2 nights in a row while I'm having these, like, crazy experiences, like,
Yeah, that's
someone's
intense.
trying to give me MDMA, and then someone else is trying to, like, convince me to not be the father of my daughter, or, like, they're trying to kill me in some capacity. It was
Right.
very strange.
Yeah, intense dreams, man. Jeez.
Yeah, it's 3/22, Skull and Bones. It's that
Yeah.
month. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they've been planning on this month for a while, I'm sure of it.
Interesting. Hmm. Well, this has been a pretty epic conversation as per usual.
Yeah, yeah, I love these episodes.
Hell yeah, man. Me too.
Yeah. No, we had some comments here that we didn't get to. Mimi said hi. Justin
Hi.
Mike, Nomad, what up, guys? Sorry we
What
didn't
up?
get into. I didn't have my full screen up, but thank you guys all for stopping by.
Yeah.
Oh, Mimi.
I
Maybe.
missed it by like a minute. I was
Yeah.
like, hold on. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Yeah, well, we're signing off here.
Yeah. So at least you got to say goodnight.
Dang it.
You're not speaking into your microphone.
Dang it.
All right.
Well, hey, it's been real.
Yes,
And
sir.
I'll see you guys soon. And
All
everybody,
right.
thank you so much for listening and tuning in.
Hi.
Yeah, bye everybody. We'll
Bye.
talk to you later.